Hello, boys and girls, and welcome back. Today we'll be reading the book The Village of Round and Square Houses by Anne Graffini. It was not until I was almost full grown and left my village that I found our village was like no other. For the men lived in square houses and the women in round ones. To me, this seemed the natural order of things. But what is it like, you ask? I will tell you how it was and is for me. I grew up on my grandmother's farm in the village of Taz that lies at the foot of Nikia Mountain in the Bamini Hills of West Africa. We planted yams and corn and tobacco and the finest coffee grown in the Cameroons. Our village was always happy and peaceful, a good place for any boy or girl to grow up. Every evening after a day of work in the fields, Uncle Dumo and Grandpa Oma came to our round house for supper. We children would hurry to put out the low wooden stool for Grandpa Oma, for he was the eldest and closest to the ancestor spirits. Then we would unroll the grass mat for Uncle Dumo, the next eldest, as was only proper and respectful. And there they would sit proudly in their bright robes, Grandpa Uma above, seated on his stool, hands on knees, Uncle Dumo seated below. Then they would ask to see the children. One by one, we would come forward from the narrow doorway, and one by one, we would be lifted to sit upon those high and bony knees. And Grandpa would ask each one of us, "What have you learned today?" We would squirm and make an answer and wiggle off those sharp knees and run to help Mama and Grandma Tika prepare the meal to come. Supper might be fish or rabbit or ground nut stew or yams. But always I would be the one to pound and soften the white castor root to make the fufu we eat at every meal. Then Mama would cook the fufu and beat it till it was white and fluffy. And she would pile the food into big bowls with round handles just right for our small hands to hold. Then we would march into the big round room, our bare feet gripping the floor. The little ones went first, carrying the bowl of heated water and towels to wash the hands before and after eating. Then the older ones would carry in the stew, spicy and steaming, smelling oh so good. And I would come in last bearing the fufu. Grandpa, as the eldest, would always eat first, dipping the first three fingers of one hand into the fufu, scooping up a small portion which he dipped quickly into the stew bowl to flavor each bite with the spicy meat and juices. Then, in order of age, Grandpa, Uncle Dumo, And sometimes Mama, if she left the cook fire, would finish their meal in the same way, and we children would follow last, making sure to leave the bowl clean. After supper, when the men went back to their square house to smoke and talk of farming and fishing in the old days of the hunt, Grandpa would leave some tobacco for Grandma. He knew she liked to smoke it later when everything was peaceful. Then she would sit alone in the moonlight, looking up at the dark slope of Nika Mountain, rising high above. I remember one night I sat beside her. Grandma Tika took the last puff of her pipe, then pointed with it to the sky above our village. You see, old Mother Nika smoking so peaceful there. I leaned way back and looked up to see old Nika's breath, rising in lazy puffs of smoke, soft and gray in the night sky. And you remember that sometimes in the night we hear old Nika snoring in her sleep. I nodded, pleased that Grandma felt as I was old enough to notice such things. Well, it is by these signs that we know she is content. What do we think the word content means? Now we live in peace with Nika and the spirits of our ancestors, but it was not always so. What do we think that they who or what do we think they're referring to when they state Onika? Let's see. Grandma fixed me with a stare and began to rock with a tail, for she was the best storyteller in the whole village. In the days of long, long ago, the people of the village lived in houses of any sort, either square or round, it did not matter. Then one peaceful night, before anyone alive remembers, old Nika began to groan and rumble and awake from a long sleep. The villagers were frightened and ran out of their houses and hid in the bushes at the foot of the mountain. A great wind came up, and the ancestor spirits in the trees cried out to warn them. Even the rocks began to tremble. Suddenly, the black night was split open like a coconut, and a great white burst of light rose like the sun. Then the voice of our mother, Nika, thundered out over all. Boom, ba boom, ba boom. And the people cried out to Nika and prayed where they were laying down, hands pressing the earth, asking, what have we done to so anger you? Although through the night, old Nika spoke to them, shouting her anger to the skies as red rivers of lava flowed down her sides. The morning sun rose, but no one could see him. The anger of Nika was too great, and ashes and smoke filled the air. Finally, no one remembers when, Nika spoke no more. Slowly, carefully, the people lifted their heads and looked about. Everything was covered with ashes, even themselves. Everyone looked at the gray ghost. No one knew who stood next to them or who came behind. So they stood there, trembling with fear, but grateful to be alive. Nika had spared them. Still covered with ashes, the men, women, and children faced the mountain together and went back to claim their homes. But when they came to the burned out village, only two houses were left standing, one square and one round. The people saw that only these two houses had been spared by Nika, and they wondered to themselves, why these? Was it a sign? But the village chief had no time for such questions, and he called them together. We must begin to rebuild our village now. He pointed to the ash covered people. You, tall gray things, you go live in the square houses. And you, round gray things, go live in the round house. And you, small gray things over there, you go pick the small gray stones out of the fields so we can plant our crops again. And so it was done. The women lived in the roundhouse with the children, and the women talked and laughed, preparing food for everyone. The men stayed in the square house and told each other tall tales and planted yams and corn, each day in a new rich soil. And the children made a game out of clearing the fields of small gray stones and went swimming and fishing in the long afternoons. And no one forgot to thank Nika for sparing their lives and giving them back such fine crops from her good earth. Grandma smiled down at me. And so you see, it has been to this day. For the women have decided they enjoy getting together to talk and to laugh and to sing. And the men have become used to being together and relaxing in their own place. And the children, Osa, is it true? Not true? The children still keep their fears clear of little gray stones. Yes, I laughed. And we still swim and play in the afternoon. But we bring home the fish we catch for supper. And we all get together then. Grandma laughed too. So you see, Osa, we live together peacefully here because each one has a place to be apart and a time to be together. She took me by the hand and turned back to the brown house. And that is how our way came about and will continue. Till Nika speaks again. And that is the end. So, what do we see that they were referring to when they stated Nika? Old Nika. Who was old Nika in this particular book? I hope you enjoyed this book today, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.